soul. I am Valeria Maritza at Healing Through You. I am an infinite being of light, and so are you. Today, I have another treat. I am having a beautiful, wonderful interview with a fantastic Christina Deering. Christina went from having an eating disorder and working in corporate to falling in love with her body, becoming a soul-aligned CEO. How does it get any better than that? She is a body love coach, a shaman, and a somatic healer. And if you don't know what a somatic healer is, she will be here in just a few seconds joining us so she can tell you all about that and her amazing transformational story. So here we go. Let's say hello to her and find out all about what she has to say. Yay! And here she is, Christina. So welcome to Healing Through You. Thank you for being here today and sharing your beautiful, amazing wisdom with us and the audience.
You're so welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to lean into this space, to lean into the topics I feel like we're going to cover today, but I also know that God, universe, source is going to move through us, and we'll see where that takes us. I'm excited.
Fabulous. So I told the audience that you were a somatic healer and a shaman and a fabulous healer. And why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself? Maybe like how'd you came into your great awakening or awareness?
Yeah. So a couple things are coming through. So I'm a body love coach. And as you were saying, I lean into somatic healing and lean into shamanism. And these were not things that I felt like I was born into. I mean, maybe, but honestly, it was one of those where it was like this really long journey of going from really hating my body and having a lot of body shame. And a lot of that came from my childhood and feeling like there was like a lot of chaos. I had an abusive nanny. And so it just felt like there was a lot of chaos in my childhood. And so I was trying to grip onto some sort of element of control. And for me, that manifested into an eating disorder in college. And I started to lean into, okay, this is not how I want to live my life anymore. I want to be able to have the freedom to be able to eat what I desire and not have to be looking for a toilet, because I was bulimic and anorexic and all these things. And I felt like my freedom was being stripped away, even though it felt like I was controlling something. And so when I started to lean into these deeper levels of why am I experiencing this right now, and these deeper levels of healing, I found so much freedom within myself, within the world that I was creating all around me. Was suddenly like, oh my gosh, I can lean into my intuition and eat what my body needs. I can lean into my intuition and start to move my body in ways that feel good. And so it was kind of like through my own self-reflection, did I start to unlock shamanism, and did I start to unlock somatic healing and the power of all of these modalities to heal myself and to heal this deep wound that I was moving through. And then I realized how effective it really is. And that's why I started bringing it into the space and into my own coaching space for other women and men who are experiencing something similar.
Amazing. And I love that you are saying that you wanted that freedom to eat, because a lot of people who go into diets go, well, I eat what I want. I have the freedom to choose what I want. I don't really care about, like you're on a strict diet, so I have the freedom. But are they? Because
Right.
a lot of times when, especially, with the sugar monster going on through right now, that everybody's just addicted to sugar, it's like, if you have the freedom to eat whatever you want and you pass by free donuts at work or wherever, are you actually able to say no to that? Or do you have to grab it?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Because when you have to grab it, then that means you actually don't have the freedom to choose what you eat.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so what's really interesting is, as you're saying that, I'm picturing me walking by a table of donuts, and it's like, for me, my intuition is all about like, do I desire that right now? For me, I know when I have donuts, I typically feel like immediately afterwards really tired or really
Uh-huh.
like I have that deep sugar or that sugar high, and then all of a sudden I'm crashing. And so again, with that intuitive eating, it's like, how do I want to feel? And how do I feel when I put things into my body that have their own agenda inside of me? How does that make me feel? And so it's for me, intuitive eating is more about how does that feel? Because there are moments where I'm like, I do want to go get ice cream, and that feels really good because I'm not depriving myself. And it's this beautiful, sweet treat that is so luscious and yummy, and I love it. But I don't feel like I'm addicted to the ice cream. For me, it's just like, I want it right now. That feels good. And there's the freedom to choose it and not restrict it, but to also know, like, how does that make me feel? And usually I don't have ice cream on an empty stomach because that will have the sugar high and then the drop. For me, it's like I've had a meal and now I'll have some ice cream. And so the two almost balance each other out.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And when you have the ice cream, you don't have any other physical negative feelings.
Not usually. I mean, I'll admit, I mean, I'm human. So there's some moments where I'm like, oh man, like maybe I had too much. So it kind of feels like a lot. But for the most part, because of all the healing work I've done, it really feels like I'm just treating myself in a way that feels good in the moment. Like I'm not eating for anyone else, or I'm not starving myself for anyone else. I'm choosing into it because I desire it in the moment. And it truly is all about what my body wants and needs in the moment. And I just follow her. I mean, she has so much innate wisdom that I truly didn't understand until I was pregnant, which was such an interesting experience because I remember my intuition coming online in a way that I had never experienced before, where it was like, all of a sudden I'm craving mangoes. And I'm like, I've never craved a mango in my entire life. Like it's never been my go-to fruit ever. We didn't really grow up with mangoes, so maybe that was part of it. But I just remember being like, I need mangoes. Like, I don't know why, I just need them. So I'm like buying mangoes. I'm buying mango juice. I'm like, what's happening? And I remember getting an email the next day from What to Expect When You're Expecting. And they were like, you might be craving mangoes because your body needs vitamin K because da, 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 da. And I remember being like, that is wild. Yeah. Like, wow, my body is really telling me what it needs and what it doesn't need, like more strong than it ever had before.
Amazing. Yeah. So would you consider being pregnant for the first time as your great awakening, or what
It was
led
one
you
of
into
them.
it?
Whew, it was one of them for sure. I got body chills on that one because I went from really being disassociated from my body and actually being like when I was younger and just kind of saying this without actually giving it a lot of thought, but being like, I want a surrogate. I can't imagine being quote unquote getting bigger. Oh my gosh, that I have all these fears and stories coming up around it. This was in my early 20s when I was kind of still thick in eating disorder time. And so I remember being like, let's start saving up, honey. Like I want a surrogate. And then going through all of my healing journey and being pregnant, that actually had me wake up to, oh my gosh, this body is the most incredible thing I have ever witnessed. Like this miracle body is making eyeballs right now. Like this miracle body is making toes right now. Like, and I'm not doing a thing. Like I'm not consciously doing a
Mhm.
thing. My body is literally doing all of it. And it woke me up to the miracle that is my body and how strong our body, like the intuition that we receive from our body, the messages we receive from our body is when we pay attention. And what was really cool was when I was pregnant, that means I wasn't taking birth control. I wasn't taking Adderall, which I took for 20 years. And that really dropped me back into my intuition too, where it was like I wasn't hyper focused on a task. I was actually calmly focused on what is it that my body is trying to tell me versus like the Adderall has you really hyper focus on something that maybe you're starting to not focus on other things in your area that is really trying to call your attention to it. So I feel like that really helped me too, of being like, wow, this body is so cool, like more than I ever even imagined.
I really love that story. I resonate with that. When I was younger, I also felt like I don't want to have kids. I'm going to
Right.
adopt. So I went even
Right.
further than you. Like I'm just like,
Yeah.
I don't want anything to do with that. I didn't want to go through the whole diaper thing. I was like, I want like a
Right.
3-year-old, you know?
Yeah. 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 Exactly. You're right.
Like I
Uh-huh.
don't want to go through the puppy training, right? Quote
Right.
unquote.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah. But again, once it happens, really incredible. Like your senses just heighten, and everything, you become so much more connected to you, and it's an amazing feeling. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's an amazing point that I
Yeah,
didn't
of course.
realize.
Right. And your senses really are, like you were saying, it's like the five senses become hyper aware, where you're like, you smell things and you're like, that's not for me. Or you smell things and you're like, that smells amazing, I need that. Versus like, and even like your sixth sense for me came online, where it was like, it became incredibly obvious what it almost like the spiritual realm was sharing with me, because I had a spirit growing within me. I mean, it was like, undeniably I'm
I
connected
love
to the
that.
spirit world. Yeah. It's like, wow, it's inside of me. And that reminded me that I'm actually a spirit inside of me too, you know? So it was really interesting.
Yeah. I just want to bring up, for those who are listening and thinking, well, I'm past that part and I didn't awaken. Like I had children, that didn't happen for me. Or, I don't want to have kids. Or maybe it's a male who's listening, that's not the only way to awaken.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I do think that's so important, because there's some women who are like, I can't have kids. Like, screw you. Is that the only way I can awaken, or whatever it might be? For me, that was my journey. And I think it's because it was my biggest fear. My biggest fear in this life was childbirth. Like I was watching these Hollywood movies and being like, oh, heck no, that looks awful. I am terrified. One, it was the pregnancy and all of the wounding that I had from that. Two, it was the actual childbirth and all the fear I had around that. And so I think for me, that's why that was one of my greatest awakenings, was because I was able to move through it and learn from it in a way that I, in particular, needed to learn. And it was like this, like specific for me, this rite of passage of being like, this is how you're going to learn, is through the fear, but also through the love of like what you're actually receiving from this particular portal. Like that portal is one that was one of my biggest awakenings, but I also had many different portals that woke me up that I was like, whoa. Like for instance, death being one of the most incredible teachers as well. And like when my dog passed away, that was my biggest spiritual awakening. My first one, at least, maybe not my biggest, but my first spiritual awakening of being like, oh, because I'll to back up a little bit. So I had made an appointment with a psychic for the first time. And this, I don't remember how, it was like mid-20s, maybe. My friend had gone to this psychic and she's like, oh my gosh, it was the most amazing experience. You have to go. So I made this appointment 8 months in advance because she was just so hard to get into. And so I'm like, okay, I think I'm free in 8 months, like let's book it. And so we booked it, and that appointment ended up landing on the day that we had to put our dog down. And it was one of the worst days of my entire life, if not the worst day of my entire life. And so I remember messaging her and being like, my puppy just passed away. I don't know what to do. Like, do I come to the appointment? Do I not? And she's like, it's totally up to you, but I want you to know I have a contract with the universe that these land on the day that you need the most. And it was like, okay, there's something there for me. I have to go. And so I went there, and like one of the first things she said to me when I walked in was, she's like, Lady wasn't a puppy. That was her name. Lady wasn't a puppy, was she? She was like pretty old. She was like 14 and a half, right? And I'm like, okay, here we go. I'm just like, whoa. So I start bawling. I'm just like my hair on my arm is sticking up by like an inch. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And so like, we sit down, she had already channeled all these messages for me. And it was like all these incredible messages from Lady already on the other side. She wants to tell you this. She knew exactly how she had passed away, which was like not something you could guess. It was literally 4 things that happened back to back that were just like, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. And she knew it all. And it was like, okay, there's something to be said. This woman is tapped into something. And oh my gosh, my relationship with Lady does not end. In fact, it's just changing form. And that was one of my whoa moments. Like there's something bigger at play here.
Amazing. Yeah. I had my huge spiritual awakening after my mom passed away, where I went through the whole thing, and I ended up hearing her speak, like, like real voices. And that was like my huge thing. But going back to the dog, when I lost my first dog, Francesca, which, by the way, is the main character of my new children's book.
Yay! How cool.
Yes, so
No
excited.
coincidences.
No coincidences.
Yeah.
She passed away, and I had this sense of calmness and peace. And she came to me a couple of days later when she showed up to me at the kitchen. I was in the kitchen, and I saw her. Like, oh, Jessica, you're here. And then I said to her in my dream, and this is before my spiritual awakening. So I want to make this clear that how connected we are, and we don't make those connections until we are like really paying attention. But in the dream, I was like, oh my gosh, you're here. And then I took this big, gigantic bone, like this big, and gave it to her. And I said, here, you can have anything you want now. Because in real life, she always had this sensitive belly that she could only eat certain foods. You couldn't give her anything off the table or anything past because she would get sick. And I just knew this in my dream, and I gave her this bone, and she grabbed it and she ran off in this beautiful park with these beautiful trees. And then she went over, and I was like so happy. I'm getting emotional here talking about.
Yeah.
And then she turns around and she was like saying, "Yay, I'm okay. I'm happy," and she went off. So yeah. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. There's still, I mean, of course, there's still energy that wants to move through you. We're so connected, and we love so deeply, and death is one of the greatest teachers. It really is. Yeah.
So pay attention to your dreams after a loved one has passed, whether it's a pet or a person or a friend, pay attention to those, because that is your soul connecting with you. If you haven't completely become aware or had your awakening, this is how your soul is communicating with you. And on that note, aren't you also animal communicators?
Well, what's wild is, and I had this huge aha with you, was my biggest spiritual awakening, or one of my earliest and biggest spiritual awakening was with Lady, right? Of all of a sudden, oh my gosh, the spiritual realm is here. And I've always been like, animals have always felt really safe with me. And I've always felt like, oh, doesn't everyone know what animals are saying? Like, doesn't everyone know how animals are feeling? And then I realized, no, actually not everyone does, or at least they do, but they're not tapped into it yet. We all have all of these abilities if we desire to have them. But sometimes we're shoving them off in a corner. Like, that's not real. When really, for me, I was just always open to it, and I was always drawn to animals. And so, yes, getting to read Teddy was so much fun. Teddy is Valeria's dog. Getting to read Teddy, because he's just like, his spirit is so fun and so sweet. And I just feel like I'm like giving him a hug when I'm connected to his energy, because he looks like a teddy bear and he's so fluffy. And I feel like I'm hugging him right now. Yeah.
Yeah, he's right here taking a nap right next to us. He must be here. Yeah. So I know you didn't put that on your bio or anything, but I was like, hey, we're talking about it. Let's just bring it out of the bag.
Let's do it. I mean, how cool, because it's like animals, quote unquote, can't speak with like the language that we're speaking. So it's like, why not tap into someone who can really like connect with the messages that an animal wants to share with you? It's kind of like babies. Like, I'm like I remember specifically with Will, Brad would be like, oh, he's crying, he's probably hungry. And I'm like, no, the tag on the back of his onesie is actually bothering him. That's why he's crying. And he's like, what? So then we tuck it, he stopped crying. And I'm like, oh, so I was just like reading his energy, or he was kind of speaking to me telepathically in ways that I felt like that actually really woke me up to being able to speak telepathically to animals, kids too, of like, oh yeah, doesn't everyone know what they're saying without them having words? And it was like, only if you're really tuned in. Apparently it's not that normal unless you're really letting yourself tune into it.
I wish I was this tuned in when I had Peter, because I was so overwhelmed, and I have this intolerance of crying babies or kids. Not because I can't take it and it's like, oh, that's terrible, but it's like I feel helpless. Like, what do I do to help you?
Yeah.
And I remember him crying and me crying with him. Like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're in that whole chaos, you're not tuning into you. So to be able to hear what they need and be able to give them what it is that they need. So, I mean, it is so helpful to have these tools and these connections as a human in anything you do, so that you can have an easier, more flowing life.
Absolutely. Yeah. But what you're speaking into too is like, you're going off of 1 hour of sleep for a week. It's like, it's harder to tune in when you're like very sleep deprived and learning something brand new all at the same time. To put it nicely, it can be chaotic for those first like month or two. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that
Yeah.
is to put it nicely.
Yeah,
In a
exactly.
nutshell.
So
I'm
yeah,
never
yeah.
gonna get another
But we're
child again.
learning. Yeah, it was a lot. I remember that. But now I'm
My
like, oh,
hat goes off to any mother of multiple
oh my,
children or
oh,
single parents.
honest to God, I mean, becoming a mom myself, I just immediately, like from day one, was like, I have so much respect for mothers, for fathers, but really deeply like for the moms, like, oh my God, for all of the above, for all parents, truly, like mothers and fathers. But it was just such this awakening experience of being like, whoa, this is way more. And I romanticized it a lot. Like I was like, we're going to be skipping and jumping and having picnics, and it's like, we do that. We skip, we jump, we have picnics, we blow bubbles. And oh my gosh, talk about going to your edges and learning more about yourself in ways that you're like, interesting. None of the circumstances are working out for me. So I got to really tap into my personal power right now.
Yeah. And it's ongoing. Like last night I had a thing with my son. It's like kept coming in. I'm like trying to work and he's kept coming in with the questions. And I want to validate him, but I'm like, can I just do my thing?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Cause it's like, oh man, you have to really learn how to multitask.
Yeah. It's difficult. And it happens when you're not grounded.
Right. Totally. Yeah.
You're like completely grounded. I just want to talk a little bit more about your animal communicator. So
sure.
Teddy came to my life and he started having seizures, and I asked Christina to tap into him and see what we could give him, given the choices and stuff. And she was able to tap into and let me know what kind of treatment was best, what would work. And I just started him on the milk thistle, by the way, which is the detox thing. And so thank you for that. So, doing the treatments and giving me that peace of mind that, okay, this is in the right direction. Yes, it's okay to do this. So it's very helpful. And I'm also saying this because if you're a healer as well, like I am, sometimes, well, most of the time, when it's like right here at home, we can't see our own blocks or, like Teddy's like my dog. So obviously I'm emotionally involved and it's difficult to decipher what to do, what's best, because we're in it. It's like being inside the box. And so this is why it's always so helpful to have someone else come in and tell you, hey, this is it. I can see it clearly because there's no emotional attachment to it. So it's very helpful to know that. And he's doing great. It's been like 37 days, but he had one more seizure, but it was much smaller at day 33 after he started his treatment. So
yeah. Oh my gosh. Whew, that's a huge shift, because you were like, he's having them every 12 hours for a little bit. Remember that little window where it was like some back-to-back ones. So that's
it was intense. It wasn't like a little thing. It was like so huge shift. And just wanted to let the audience know, like this is something that's available to you if you're like wanting to reach out and take care of also your animals. And
yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah. I'm so glad that that's working out. It's so fun. It's funny, like even in my backyard, like I remember getting a reading once and she's like, you kind of remind me of like Snow White because all these animals are just drawn to you. Like, and I just know, and I'm like, are animals not drawn to everyone? And I just remember looking in the backyard once and seeing a deer, which is like, no one has ever seen a deer in Highland Shores before, apparently. And I remember just being like, oh yeah, I'm like taking a picture and sharing it out to a group. And they're like, I've literally never seen a deer here. Like, I don't even know how the deer got into your yard or out of the yard. And I don't know because I didn't see it get in or get out. But just in general. And I remember just like being at a lake house one time and just like feeding deer and just be like, and I'm like, does everyone else not feed deer? What's happening? And just being like, I just have this deep love for the souls that are inside of everything, even to the point where Brad's like, your empathy has no bounds. Like, I'll be like, don't kill the spider, like there's a soul in there. And he's like, okay, really? And I'm like, yeah, we're all connected. And he's like, this is so intense. But it's like, we are, I don't know. There's a part of me that's like, ouch. Like when I see someone kill something else, even if they're insects, Yeah.
Yeah, I remember my first year of doing the work. I remember literally being outside and having all these animals just
Yeah.
hang out and noticing them and enjoying their company. And I'm like, hey,
Yes.
they're not afraid of me, like,
Right.
and then somebody else coming out of the house and then everybody would
Right.
go. And I'm like, what happened?
Totally. Yeah. It's an energy thing. They feel your energy. Yeah, we have these beautiful bluebirds and like red cardinals that just fly back and forth in the yard.
Mhm.
And I'm just like, oh, I love them so much. And all of these butterflies, like, but what's really interesting is I start to notice based on where my vibration is, that's when I start to notice there's 50 butterflies in the backyard versus I see no butterflies. I'm in a bad mood, and it's like,
Uh-huh.
oh, interesting. Yeah, our vibration definitely has us experience different realities. I feel like it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing. Awesome. All right, so well, let's shift a little bit, and why don't you tell us a little bit more about this somatic healing? Because I just heard about this a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, what is that? Like, I haven't
Yeah.
heard about that at all yet. So
Yeah.
tell us a little bit, enlighten us.
Yeah. So what's really interesting about our body is that we carry trauma inside the cells of our body, regardless of whether or not we actually would equate it to trauma. Because I will say 9 times out of 10, we don't consider something traumatic when it actually was for us. Like we're like, well, it's not as bad as XYZ. So therefore, I can't consider that trauma. I'll consider that something else. And so we really diminish trauma that's stored in our body that's actually energetically weighing us down. And so when we use our body to start to heal and release all the things, the stories, the energetic heaviness from our body, it actually is like one of the most potent healing tools that I myself have used, that I've used with my clients as well. And it's incredible what happens when we go into the body and let the body tell the story without words. Because when we start to put words to it, we start to have the ego get involved and being like, well, it's not that bad, or I don't really remember it completely. When the body's like, I remember exactly what happened. This is how it felt. This felt too much, too fast, this, or whatever it might be. And it's really interesting when we start to let the body tell the story and just let it release from the cells of our body what comes through. So I was doing this exercise myself for my birthing story. And I just remember I didn't think that it was quote unquote traumatic, but I let my body tell the story. And I let myself I immediately dropped into it. Like I just closed my eyes and I was like, what if I told my birth story with just my body? And all of a sudden it's like, I'm like dry heaving and it's like all this stuff is just starting to come out and move through me. And it's like, I'm crying and it's like, it's just moving through me like this energetic ball of like 50 pounds is just released off of my shoulders, released out of my body. And I was like, that was living there. That was living in my body. I had no idea. And it's like when we start to take the mind out of the equation and really let the body move the story, move the trauma, the weight of the whatever it is that's been living there is truly fully released from our body. And I've had people who are like, oh my God, like a woman who I recently did a somatic healing with was carrying this trauma for 40 years. And in one session, and like it was like the session itself was maybe 30 or 40 minutes, she's like, oh my God, I feel like I fully finally released it. Like I'm finally okay with what happened, and not necessarily okay, but I just don't feel the heaviness from it anymore. It doesn't make me feel like a bad person anymore. It doesn't make me feel ashamed. Like I feel like I actually finally released it. Like it's okay. Like it doesn't define me anymore. Like it's gone. And it was like, whoa, like,
Amazing.
wow. Yeah.
Wow, yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, there's so many modalities, and I've done a lot of work, and I just heard about this, and it's incredible. Like the longer that we do the work and the deeper that we go down that rabbit path, is like, wow, like, there's even more that I can tap into. There's even more that I have accessible to me. And so I love this because it just feels really connected to the humanness that we are, right? The
Yes.
human, physical,
Yeah.
heavy body that we carry.
Yeah.
Release
Yes.
that. So I am for those of you who don't know, I'm actually having one session with Christina next week. But
Yeah.
actually, I probably had it yesterday because this is not airing till Thursday. So
We'll let you know how it goes.
yeah, I am so looking forward to it. I'm so excited.
Yeah, me too. It's so interesting because we really do diminish what we would consider trauma, and our body is there to be like, no, let's release this, like it's there. And I think that's where that was one of my biggest moments too, was when I released that childhood story of like when I was molested as a child. I didn't know that was living there. And it wasn't until my body started to physically release it that I realized, oh, that wasn't normal. Oh, interesting. And it was the heaviness itself that I was physically feeling move that I realized, oh, that was really traumatic as a child. Okay, I really do get to release that now fully. Where intellectually, I think about my 5-year-old brain and I'm like, is that not normal? Like, that's normal. That's normal. Or that's not that big of a deal. Or I don't even understand what this is. I can't
Yeah.
even equate it to anything. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was like my body knew when my 5-year-old mind couldn't comprehend it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And for those of you who are looking into your own awakening or expanding your awareness, this is exactly how that happens, is when we release the darkness that we have stored within our bodies, we lift it up, and then what happens? We fill ourselves with light.
Yes.
That's bringing more light into the body. That's what awakens you. That's what allows you to connect with your God-given gifts. That's the work. So for those of you who are like wondering, like, well, how do I do this? How do I go around it? This is one of the ways. There's like so many ways to do it, but it comes down to the same thing. It's releasing the trauma, releasing the darkness, and filling yourself with light and love.
Yes. And what was really interesting, and I'm not consciously aware of whether or not it's happened to me this way yet or happened to me this way before, but I actually was filling myself with so much light that I physically purged that memory that I didn't even know was there. It was like I had this like beautiful moment of myself. It was like I was feeling so liberated and free. And I was just like in the hot tub, looking up at the stars, realizing how incredible this life experience is. I was like, what if I just bathed in this beautiful hot tub just for me, and I just let myself be liberated? Like, what if I just took my swimsuit off and just felt myself be completely just me, like without anything external on me? It just felt right. And I'm filling myself with all this light. And I never felt comfortable just being naked outside. And I have bushes everywhere in my backyard, and felt like totally safe doing it. But I filled myself with so much light and just let my body lead me in that moment of just like, what if you let yourself be free right now? What if that wasn't a bad thing? What if there wasn't any shame and just really deeply loving your body? And so by me doing that, all of a sudden, 30 minutes later, I'm like dry heaving in a corner. I'm like, what the heck just happened? Like, wow. And then it was like, oh, as I'm like feeling myself physically purge this energy, I was actually coming to the realization of what it actually was at the same time. It was very interesting. That's the first time I consciously felt myself bring in all of this light and suddenly have to release a lot of dark, because it almost like the two couldn't coexist.
They can't. They
Yeah.
cannot. Darkness cannot exist where the light is. That's right.
Yeah. It was wild. But to your point, if you're doing all this healing work and you're releasing a bunch of heavy trauma, fill yourself back up with light, because now you have all this open space. Like, actively choose into the light, because that's truly what we want underneath all of it, is just fill yourself up with that divine light, that beautiful, loving energy.
Amazing. Wow. We've talked so much. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the story, right? The story of how you went from your body trauma to loving your body.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting when I think back to when maybe my body image issues happened. I was very young when I started to kind of look at my body and tear it apart and be like, I don't like these freckles, or look at these moles, or look at my love hand. I was looking at all of these areas of my body and just kind of picking it apart. And at some point, like I was sharing, it really manifested into an eating disorder. And it wasn't like randomly I throw up or randomly I starve myself. It was like a consistent, every meal I was throwing up afterwards, or I wasn't eating. And then I would be so hungry that I would binge, and then I would purge it. And so it was like, and this happened in college. And I think part of that was like, I was in a really tumultuous relationship where it was like, felt like it was hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold. And I needed something to control. And for me, what that manifested as was like my weight. If I can't control my relationship and I can't control my outside circumstances, what if I controlled my weight? That felt safe to me. Right. And it was like, so it manifested into this eating disorder. And then at some point I had these incredible roommates that at the time I was like mad at them for it, but they were like, we're going to call your mom. Like, this isn't, you need help. Like, you're not able to stop this on your own. And so ended up talking to my mom. She ended up hiring a life coach for me at the time, which was what I needed. I needed the accountability to be like, I didn't throw up this week. Yes. Like gold star. Like, that's what I felt like. I was like, good, bad, good, bad. And so for me, that's kind of how it started, was like having someone be able to keep me accountable. But there was a deeper part of it that I wasn't aware of, which was, what's the root cause of me doing this to my body? Because it's not just, can I be accountable to myself? It was like, why am I doing this? Like, underneath, not just the circumstances now, but this is kind of mirroring my chaotic childhood of having an abusive nanny, of like, now the relationships I had called into my space felt like they were abusive too. And so it was like, okay, I'm kind of like mirroring my childhood. Can I start to actually heal what I experienced in my childhood to really start to release the need to control in other ways? And so for me, that really was this long journey. I mean, it doesn't have to be long, but for me, it was, of like starting to better understand, like, what is it that's there? How can I start to heal? Because it was like I was doing my own research, as opposed to being like, let me just go straight to a healer that can really help me move this quickly, quote unquote, quickly, or get to the root of it. For me, it was more about like, it was this steady, like one foot in front of the other, little clues started coming out about like, what is it? What is it? Can I start to heal that? Can I better understand what this is? And I remember working with another life coach of like, I was in this, back and forth state of self-sabotage. And it was like, why are you doing that? Like, why are you sabotaging yourself in this way? And she kept asking me for a deeper level of why. And when I got down to the very bottom of it, my answer was, because I don't like myself. And I remember saying it, and she started crying. She's one of my best friends who's also a coach. She started crying because she's like, I wish you could see what I see. It just like, she's like, it pains me to hear you say those words out loud. And for me, I felt elated because I'm like, oh, that doesn't work for me. I can't believe that was living under the, like, it was like one of the biggest clues that came out. Like, I don't like myself. That's not cool. Like, I don't want to not like myself. And I found it really empowering of being like, what if I could start to love myself? Actually, what if I started to transition all of these things that I was doing that I didn't understand why? Oh, it's because I don't like myself. To now, what if I started moving into this self-love journey of like, what would that look like on top of the healing to actually really like myself and to say things that were kind to myself? Because I don't think we realize how often these thoughts are happening at like lightning speed that aren't nice, that we're like looking in the mirror and we're like, ooh, or I don't like that, or, oh, I'm so stupid, I can't believe I did that. Where it's like, we're constantly being so mean to ourselves, where it's like, I had this realization, what if I could be on my own team? What if I could actually show up for myself in a way that I've never done that before? What would change in my life if I started doing that? And it's just been this like beautiful journey of noticing the thoughts and shifting them, but also coming into sessions like with you to heal. Okay, where did that come from though? So it's like an active process of like, in the present moment, how can I shift it? But also, let's go to the root and heal it so that it's not consistently showing up and manifesting. But we're all human. Like, it will show up in different ways, but it has released, I would say, like 90 to 95% of my thoughts now are so kind, because I've actively chosen to heal the roots of things and actively chosen to shift them. And when I notice the 5% coming in, it's so strong and so intense and so jarring that I'm like, oh no, we got to fix this right now. Like, not fix it, but we got to shift this, because that feels so crappy. But I never thought I would get to that space of like, oh my gosh, I'm kind to myself. Like, I'm being nice to myself. Like, how, like, I love my body. I never thought I would get to a space of actually loving my body. And I look at my body and I'm like, you are a miracle. Like, and even when I look at my body and I notice things like, oh, like this dress is hugging me maybe in a way that I don't necessarily like, I'll notice that. And then I'll shift it and I'll be like, what do you love about your body? Actually, like my legs look amazing.
I
My
love
butt
that.
looks so good in this actually. Wow. And then I start really feeling myself. I stand up taller. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's really interesting when I start to even shift. My body itself doesn't shift, but the way that I look at it changes the way that I carry myself and changes my energy towards myself too. It's really interesting.
Absolutely. I just want to say, when you were talking about sharing with your friend about, when you had that first realization of, I don't like myself, and her giving you that full confirmation is like, I wish you could see what I see.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're all connected here. And the guys are like, we wish you could all see yourselves like what
Yes.
we see you as. And so this is
Yes.
for everyone, not just us here, but like,
Yeah.
because you're all connected, so your spirit guides, your angels, God, the divine, whomever it is that you work with, they're
Yeah.
looking down at us, for lack of a better explanation of
Yeah.
where they're coming from,
Yeah.
and they're looking at how amazing we humans are, how
Yeah.
courageous we are, all the things that we do here on life, and they're looking at us beating ourselves up and having all the self-doubt and all of that stuff. They're saying, we wish you knew what we can see, because you are so incredibly amazing.
Yeah. Yes. Oh my God. I got body chills when you said that too. Like, and it's one of those where it's one foot in front of the other. It's an active choice. Like, what if I changed the thought that I just had about myself? How would that make me feel? Or what if I just let that go? How would that feel? Wow, that would actually feel really light. Okay, let me choose into that. Let me choose that.
Yeah. And you know what else is, was coming through that I'm going to share about that, is that you have gone through your journey, just like you said, step by step, one thing at a time. And just like you said, it took you a long time, and it doesn't have to. And for me, it's the same thing. My first awakening was over 20 years ago. And
Mm-hmm.
it took me until maybe the last 4 years for me to
Mm-hmm.
really envelop what it was. And that's part of my story, that it doesn't have to take this long. So when
Yes.
you meet someone like a healer who's doing the work, the purpose of that healer to help you, guide you in your journey, is to literally cut away the time and
Yes.
allow you to shift quickly, because
Mm-hmm.
we've already gone through all the steps. Now, of course, you can do it yourself as well, like we have done. And then, until we got to the point like, okay, I need some help, and then let's shift faster. But it takes so long, right? Like my journey, like 20 years ago, 20 plus years ago, is when I had my first like hearing my mother speak, and I did nothing with it for like 17 after that.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have to be that way. You're ready now to just step into that part of you and be like, okay, I want to do that. I want what you guys are talking about. Where do I find that help? And just do it for yourself, because we collapse your time so that you can move forward and get to the next level without having to wait 20 years.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. There's so much coming through right now as you're saying that, where it's like, you are your own best investment. Can you imagine if we just really were soul aligned in the way that we spent our energy right now, which is manifested in money, right? In this lifetime, where it's like money equals energy. What if you put your energy into yourself? And again, that idea of like death is one of the best teachers, is like, let's say you get to your last day of life. Are you going to look back and be like, I'm so glad I played it small. I'm so glad I did not invest in myself. I'm so
I'm so glad
glad.
I left all that money in the bank and watched it grow.
Exactly.
It
Yeah.
didn't go anywhere.
Right. I'm so happy I just got to look at it instead of experience life. And honestly, the healing has had me experience life in brand new ways, where it's like, wow, I actually really deeply appreciate this vacation I'm on now, because I'm not hyper focused on the little things that don't matter. It's like everything looks brighter now that I've gone into my own healing work. And like, once you plug into that energy of like a healer, a life coach, someone you resonate with, I mean, for me, there's no turning back. I will always be plugged into someone's energy, because the quantum leaps are like addictive. I'm like, whoa, like, let's keep going, baby, because I don't want this to take 20 years. I want this to take 2 days. Like, let's go. If you can do that, why not? Like, you are your own best investment. Like, you are so worth it. You are so worth it. And sometimes it just takes that first that first session of tapping into it and being like, oh my God, I feel different. What if I did that again? How would I quantum leap if I did that again? Yeah, it's just
And
really
don't you
interesting.
find that once you decide to invest in yourself, whether it's like your vacation where you just take your family, you know, in a place that you hadn't done before because you wanted to save the money, or invest on your own growth, or whatever it is, right? Or maybe you're going to college, or whatever it's calling your soul.
Yes.
Don't you find that after doing that, that investment that you created just comes back to you?
A million times over. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I spent that money, but oh, wait a second, I just got whatever free
Yes.
money from the
Yes.
universe coming in, right?
Uh-huh. I remember investing in this portal of being like, I think it was like $3,000 or something, some sort of healing portal. I invested in it, and some random woman reached out to me and was like, hello, I am a humanitarian and I would like to give you $3,000. And I'm like, what? It was so weird. And I'm like, okay, you know? And so it was like, it's just like the universe, there are infinite possibilities. And when we're looking at it through just like, I only get money from my salaried job, you're really cutting yourself off from like the infinite possibilities of where energy can flow through. And
Literally.
follow your intuition, like turn left here instead of right. Maybe you meet someone that changes your life forever because your intuition told you to walk into the grocery store now, even though you didn't actually need something, whatever it might be. Like,
Yeah.
hey, yeah.
Absolutely. I love that, love that, love that. Yeah, it's amazing. I remember the first time I invested in myself. I think my very first investment in me was something around 2,500.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, I was like, oh,
Oh, totally.
hyperventilating. That's so
Yeah.
much money. What am I doing? I want my money back. I want to. I was like, all of those thoughts, right? And after that, it's like then I invested in somebody else, and he was like, oh, that's 6,000. Okay. It's like, what? Like, what happened to me, right? It's like all of a sudden you see the value of the investment. And like just recently, I just invested on something else with myself, and it's like, okay, you know, like here you go. And it's kind of like, it feels different because my energy has risen to that next level of like, yeah, I'm worth it. And I know this pays me back, right? And I'm not doing it because it's going to pay me back. I'm doing it because I want to do it. And it feels aligned. And I'm like, yeah, let me do that, right? And then it's like more things come up. And I'm like, do I want that? Yes, I want that. And here's my money. And it doesn't feel painful anymore, which is a complete shift. It's like, because I know that it's coming back. So it's like, I don't have that fear or that sense of scarcity of like, well, if I spend this, if I have $10,000 and I spend two, oh, now I only have 8. And it took me 8 months to make $2,000. Now I'm going to have to save for 8 more months to get to where I was. Like, that's my mentality, how it was before. Now it's like, oh, okay, I want that. Do I, like, it really feels like I want it. And here you go, I'm doing it. And I'm not even thinking about what's in the bank. I don't even think about what's going out. I just like feel aligned with it. And then just magically everything comes back to me, you know? And it's just such an amazing place to be at that you don't understand until it happens to you.
Yeah. Well, your angels and guides are like applauding you, like, yes, that's why you came here, to heal, to experience life, to experience like higher vibrations of you, different realities. Like, this is exactly where you're meant to spend it because you feel so aligned, right? You feel it in your body, like, this is for me. And to follow that is like, it's so rewarding because this experience itself, you're like, oh my gosh, yes. And it's that additional validation where sometimes it comes back immediately, or sometimes it just comes back from being like, wow, my mentality around money has shifted altogether in this portal. And now I'm making more money because I healed that in the space. So it's just really interesting.
And it's incredible because you never think about it. Like, I didn't start investing in myself thinking, you know, when the very first time I invested, I was, you know, hyperventilating. I really wanted to call the person and say, I changed my mind, give me my money back. I didn't, thank God I didn't. But I went through all of those fears, and it was just a completely mind shift of like, we can talk here until we're blue in the face. If, you know, I would not have understood it until it actually happened, until I saw it happening for me. Like, you cannot understand it.
And now on the other side, how validating were those feelings of fear with spending the money of being like, oh, that really meant that I had something there to heal. Like that really was pointing me in the direction of like, yeah, you really get to heal this, because to live your life in that sort of way where you're like, I'm kind of like holding, gripping, like we're not here to grip. We're actually here to be in flow. We're here to experience with our five senses what we came here, like, because we, like you were saying, you're the one who like blew my mind when you said, we can't taste on the other side. We can't feel on the other side. Like we can't, all the senses that we drop into this body to experience, like savor the dark chocolate, savor the taste of what it is that you're eating, because we can't do it on the other side. How does that rose actually smell when you let yourself smell it? And it's like, we're experiencing deeper versions of ourselves through this body. And I think that's where so much of my body healing has come to, is like, I look at my body as more than just a thing to look at or an image, a personified image or whatever it is external, right? Now I'm like, oh my God, my body is my five senses. My body is my sixth sense. My body is me connecting with the spiritual realm. My body is telling me what's for me versus what's not for me. When I feel my energy expand in my body, I know it's for me. When I feel it constrict in my body, I know that it's not. And it's this intuitive vehicle for my soul that's truly telling the story of my soul. Like if I'm feeling sickness in an area, it's actually telling me the story of my soul. There's something here for me to heal because I have a belief that's not serving me. And now it's manifested as a physical ailment or physical pain, which means there's energy that's stuck there that I need to clear, that I get to clear. So if my body is literally telling the story of my soul, it is so much more than just something to look at. It is so much more than that.
It's our biggest tool.
Yes.
Our body is our biggest tool that we have access since we were born,
Yeah.
And for those of you who are wondering, what does she mean we can't taste or feel things on the other side? It's because we are all one. And so on the other side, you see a beautiful, amazing, gorgeous rose and you go. And as soon as you think about it or feel it, you become the rose.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're looking at the world from the rose point of view, and you're feeling what it feels like to be a rose and with those senses. And so it's very different than having that separation, which is body and item, and being able to smell. So that's a huge difference between what we are as souls, when we are like in the bliss of oneness, in the bliss of love and all that's beautiful, without the energies that bring us down here as humans. But so that's the huge difference. And just to clarify also, all of the things, all of the struggles that we go through here as humans, all of the things that we see in the world that we're like, we don't like or we don't resonate with, they are there to show us the difference, so that we can see and choose the light, so we can choose love, because now we know, oh, I don't like what's happening there. I'm choosing to do this other thing, which is, love and light, instead of pain and, sadness or darkness, right? And so that's why that exists here. There's another huge question answering here about, why does the world work the way it works?
Yeah, that law of polarity, right? Where you're seeing like the darkness, not to have yourself feel like a victim to it, like, oh, this world is so scary and so unsafe. It's like, actually, what if you were to be like, I'm choosing as a member of the collective to actually increase the love and light here, instead of having that be something that I'm a victim to? What if it empowered me to actually raise the vibration of the frequency here that everyone else is also plugged into and tapped into? Like, it actually gets to empower you to make a change, a transition that feels, that's the thing that you want. Like our sacred rage, the rage that moves through us, that anger is not only here to point us to what to heal, but activate us in a way of making change here. Like we feel that to start to move our body in the direction that we desire. Instead of having it be, I have this sacred rage, I'm going to punch someone in the face. It's like, I have this sacred rage and I'm going to use it to change this freaking planet. Like, let's go,
so
baby.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Such a powerful statement.
Yeah.
Well, Christina, this has been amazing. I can talk to you all day.
Same.
So where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, a couple of different places. So you can follow me on Instagram if you want to just dive in. I have so much free content there that I'm always uploading. I am my Instagram handle is I am Christina Deering, and that's Deering. So you could find me there. That's one of the first ways you can start to really plug into my energy. And then I have this Facebook group. It's a free Facebook community. It's called the Spiritual Conduit. And it's a place where I do live card readings as well. It's a place where I host master classes. So you can learn more about, like, I just did a master class on body wisdom. Like, our body is so much more than just a vehicle to look at. Our body is actually all of this innate wisdom. And so I'm constantly having free master classes in there. So those are two places you can really plug into. That would be a great jumping off point to start to just learn and see what feels good, and just learn more about your soul and your body and all of these things that we came here to experience in this life experience.
Awesome. And I'll put the links also in the description of this podcast, so you guys can go and find it. So you don't have to be going back and rewinding and trying to see like the information. So I'll put it there and you can just check that out. And is there anything specific, any offers that you are currently running that you would like to share with the audience?
Sure. So I'm really excited. There's this one program that's being birthed through me, which we've talked about. I don't even know what the name of it is, but kind of what it's about is all about falling back in love with your body, but it's really deeply rooted in, let's start to heal the root of the body shame. Like, where is this actually coming from? Like, really, like, allowing yourself to really experience that new level of understanding for yourself. And that's the first part of it. So it's this 4-month container where you step in and you really start to understand, like, what's the root of why I dislike myself, or I shame myself, or I look in the mirror and I don't like what I see. Let's start to really uproot that and heal that. And then we start to, and in each of these months, you're going to be experiencing these deep somatic healings, where you're going to be releasing from the cells of your body what you've been storing and holding and identifying as, where it's not actually you. Like, release that energetic weight to better understand, like, who am I underneath all of these stories that aren't actually me, that aren't serving me. And then we start to take it levels further of, like, how can I really start to understand and love myself in a way that I never actually thought possible? And it's just this really beautiful container. And if that is speaking to you, reach out to me. It might be called Embodied, and like all capital BODY in the middle. I'm not sure yet. I'm still channeling it. But if that is speaking to you, reach out to me on Instagram. Send me a message. Of the people that first step into that portal, it's going to be this beautiful, like, pre-sale price where it's like, it will never be this low again, but it really is for the people that are like the early adopters that are like, you know what? I feel like stepping into this portal of transformation. Let's go. Because it is one of these things that's being birthed through me in real time with you. And I'm just so excited to see what comes through as the two of us are plugging into each other's energies to see how to actually make this be what it already is. So if you're one of those early adopters that is like, I'm ready, my intuition is telling me to go, reach out to me on Instagram and we can talk more about it.
Amazing. Yes. And I just want to encourage anyone who's listening to this and feels like, oh, that kind of is for me, but really I want more information. If you're feeling the first thing of like, that might be for me, just go with it, because that is your intuition speaking to you loudly. This is how it was for me when I started down my path. It was like, I knew I had to work with this person. I knew whatever it was that she was doing, and I had no idea what it was or what I was getting. And that was one of the reasons why it was so difficult for me, like, to like go back and forth. Is because I knew I had to do it. I knew my soul was saying, go this way. And yes, 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 giving me all the green lights, but I had no more information about it because I didn't understand it. I just wasn't at the level of understanding what it was. And it wasn't even like 2-3 weeks that I was already seeing the difference in me while working with her once I started. But I just want to give you that encouragement that if you're getting that feeling, and that's with anyone or anything that you see, anywhere that you feel the pull, that, oh, that's for me, but what's the rest of the information? Just jump on it now, because I am telling you, it is going to be so worth it when you follow that intuition that says, yes, right? Just go, yes.
Yes. It's all a puzzle piece. Like, we don't have to know what the whole puzzle looks like, but if you're like, ooh, this puzzle piece is mine, follow it, because you'll start to connect it with something else that will make more sense, that will connect with something else that makes more sense. It's like all of our entire life is just little puzzle pieces that we're getting, but we're meant to follow it, because if we receive the puzzle piece and we're like, I don't know, then your puzzle is kind of missing a piece, and maybe you'll find something else, to fill it in later. But you'll fill it in so much faster if you just follow those little intuitive hits. Those are like little puzzle pieces to your soul.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you for coming here and sharing your beautiful story with us in Healing Through You. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Yeah, thank you, Valeria. I'm so grateful that you created this channel for people to plug into and just more deeply understand themselves. It's like, oh, I wish podcasts were a thing when I first started too. Like, it's just so fun to learn from people who have walked certain paths where you're like, interesting, or it just like, there's a ping of like, oh, that's mine too, or whatever it might be. So thank you for creating this. It's just like, there's so much wisdom in every single episode. And I'm just so glad that people have an opportunity to plug in to different people's energies and try it on for size and see what feels like that missing puzzle piece.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank
I'll talk to
you.
you soon.
Sounds
Bye.
good. Bye.